Welcome to the IEEE Eta Kappa Nu podcast, Career Conversations. I'm your host, Rebecca Cohen. I'm a member of the HKN Young Alumni team, a group of young engineers and computer scientists navigating our own careers, sharing our conversations about work, life, family, and having it all. Many of you may already be familiar with today's guest, John McDonald, from his many publications and his appearance on the IEEE Power and Energy Society's Young Professional webinar, Key Insights to Career Management. John is an IEEE Life Fellow who's been both an IEEE and IEEE-HKN member for 50 years, having been inducted into HKN's beta chapter at Purdue University in 1971. John holds both a bachelor's and a master's degree in electrical engineering from Purdue University and an MBA from the University of California, Berkeley. John has spent 47 years working in industry as an engineer, a manager, and an executive managing people's careers, and was selected to be the Protection, Automation, and Control World, better known as PAC World, magazine's guru in their June 2020 issue. John has published over 100 papers and articles, has co-authored 5 books, and has 1 US patent. In addition to all of this, John is an avid traveler, family man, and fitness guru. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thank you.
Yeah. We're really glad to have you here because today we're going to be talking about mentoring, what it is, what it isn't, and how to build a great mentoring relationship, whether you're the mentor or the mentee. So just to get started, in your own words, can you define for us what mentorship is?
Yeah, I think mentoring, I think the important thing with mentoring is really motivating and empowering the other person to help them identify, their own issues and goals and find ways of resolving or reaching them, but, not by doing it for them or expecting them to do it the way I did it, but by understanding and respecting, different ways of working, and actually help them. In many cases, there might be specialized avenues of help, that we identified during the mentoring process, help them get connected, and really focus on their personal growth and development, social and economic opportunity.
That's really great. Kind of taking into account that everyone is a little bit different and every mentorship experience might be a little bit different. So can you kind of go into a little bit of what it's like to mentor students versus young professionals or even, mid-career professionals?
At a high level, what I just described, it doesn't change, right? Whether it's a student, young professional, the mid-career professional, in terms of what their goals would be, obviously would be a little bit different than someone starting out, but you still want to find out, how to help them grow. So at a high level, it'd be the same, but really the next level down would be quite a bit different. A student, is interested in resume, job, internships, maybe co-ops, how to prepare for the working world, what's important for the working world, where a young professional is in the working world. And then it's dealing with their manager, dealing with a company, looking at really driving their career growth, not relying on a manager or the company, but they have to take the initiative themselves. And a mid-career person really, it's figuring out what they've accomplished to date, and then really what their goals would be for the rest of their career, and then help them do that. And actually, once I learn more about what they want to do and what they've accomplished, I can give them good suggestions on what they should do for the rest of their career.
Yeah, that's great. And then you mentioned kind of, these young professionals would have a manager, or maybe a student would have an advisor who they go to. Where does a mentor fit in with that? How does that relationship differ? Or would you consider an advisor a mentor or a manager a mentor?
Not really, truthfully. I think to be the most effective mentor, I really think you want somebody. I mean, it could be somebody in the company, but I wouldn't see the mentor to be your manager or maybe a more experienced person on your team, because you want the mentor to have to bring you diversity of opinion, diversity of perspective. And so you wouldn't, I wouldn't want, I wouldn't, the most effective mentor wouldn't be one that is you're working with day to day or on the same team. I find it's one that is very experienced in the things that maybe you aren't doing now, but the things you're interested in the future. What you may want to do, but you aren't sure. Um, and then you get more of a diversity of perspective than somebody that's too close to what you're doing right now.
That's a really great point. And I know that I've seen, especially with bigger companies and some small ones as well, they have sort of formal mentoring programs where you can get matched up with a mentor. Have you participated in those? I assume that, there's a pretty broad spectrum of young professionals and more experienced professionals within any given company. So what has your relationship been with that kind of a mentoring program?
No, that's really true. Um, I've always done a lot of mentoring just on my own, naturally, without having any formal programs. I see a lot of students and young professionals, the more they get to know me, they can see that I can help them, and they ask me to help mentor them, which I love to do. So informally, I've been doing that, but what I really appreciated was a couple of years ago in my business at GE. So we're about a $5 billion business. Um, our technology group set up a formal mentoring program that was well done and very thorough and well structured. And we had over 150 young people that wanted to be mentored. And so I initially had 5 young people from all over the world that I was mentoring. And then it was so successful, we had a second round where I had some additional young people. So this is a formal program, okay, with my business at GE. And then in January, as the subcommittee 3 chair of IEEE Power and Energy Society Long Range Planning Committee, I put together with some young professionals that were helping me a mentoring program for IEEE PES. And we started with the PES scholarship recipients and the top scholars in each of the regions of the US, IEEE regions. And I've been mentoring 5 of them through the PES, and that's been fantastic. That's in addition to the informal mentoring. But one last thing was my business at GE about 10 years ago piloted something I had never experienced before, a reverse mentoring program. Okay, so we took it was piloted by our CIO. So he was hiring recent graduates into our 2-year rotational IT leadership program at GE. So every 6 months they have a new rotation. So it's 4 rotations in 2 years. Fantastic program. And a young guy, Chris, who was just hired from the University of Georgia, who specialized in IT and management information systems, just joined the IT leadership program, became my reverse mentor. And we met a couple hours every month, and he taught me about software applications and things at GE. And he helped me. I was doing a frequent blog within our business, and he helped me with a blogging platform and all the functionality that I could do. Then I taught him about the industry. I gave him copies of some of my books, and helped him with, in the beginning of his career. That went on for over 3 years.
Okay.
And even after the pilot program stopped, Chris told our CIO he wanted to continue to meet with me. And Computer World magazine, Rebecca, did an article on reverse mentoring. Could only find 2 companies that were doing reverse mentoring, Cisco and GE. And so they interviewed Chris and put his picture in the article in Computer World magazine. So he was ecstatic. He went from a recent college graduate to being interviewed by Computer World magazine and being included in an article on reverse mentoring.
That's great. And definitely not something that you hear about often. So would you say that reverse mentoring is something that, one should try to build into most of their mentoring relationships, or is that something really specialized where you have to have the right kind of mindset going in that this will be, a by mentoring relationship?
I think it has to be presented in the right way, because think about it, a young recent college graduate can be somewhat intimidated by saying, okay, you're going to mentor a person who's well known in the world, 45, 50 years experience, written all these books and all this stuff. Um, on the other hand, a very experienced person can say, you know, what would a young person bring to me, right? Why, why would, why would I want to spend the time with reverse mentoring, And which is crazy, but I think it has to be presented the right way. It's a win-win for both people if they're willing to try it. Okay. And I still say, no matter how old you are, you have to keep up with technology. And the best way to do that is spend as much time as you can with young people, you know, uh, because it'll rub off on you, and you'll understand it. And they can bring you perspectives that are healthy perspectives that you never thought about yourself. And obviously it's a win for the young person, because you learn so much about the industry from all the experience of the more senior person.
Definitely. Even I think 5 years about now out of college, the more recent grads than me definitely leaps and bounds above already in certain areas. So completely understand that. um, so as you mentioned, there should be something to gain on each side of a mentoring relationship. So if it's not necessarily technical skill, what's something that a mentee can bring to the relationship, or, help them feel more comfortable asking for a mentor and asking for that relationship?
You know, um, um, I think one fallacy with mentoring with young people is that it's technical training or technical product training, and that's not what mentoring is about. Okay, and I find many of the young people when they they want to be mentored, and then you know they really don't know what it means by career development. What are the aspects? If I asked a young person, what are 10 key things about your career that you need to think about, even two key things, they'd have trouble. If it was a question about technology or school or courses, it'd be easy. But so I have that 1 hour webinar you mentioned, Key Insights to Career Management. I review my 47-year full-time career, and there's 12 key decisions I made that impacted the rest of my career. So before our first mentoring session, I ask a new mentee, right? So please spend an hour to watch that, and it'll help you understand the types of things I can help you with, not technical, not product training, but about yourself, your growth, your development, and what's important. It's phenomenal. After they spend an hour and watch that, then they truthfully have a long list of questions, you know. But if they had watched that, they wouldn't know where to start. Truthfully, what mentoring. So I think the other thing is we always get connected on LinkedIn and review each other's profiles, which gives you a good head start in the background of the person.
Yeah, that's great. It's definitely helpful, I think, going in, having that, list of questions, something to talk to your mentor about, kind of having a baseline of this is where we're going to start the mentorship process. So do you, go ahead.
Let me say, Rebecca, that a mentor really appreciates a mentee who sends an email prior to the next mentoring session and says, these are the 2 or 3 things I want to talk about on our next session. Because it shows a couple things. One is that they value your time, and because you're very busy, typically you're very experienced, you're very busy, and they value your time, and they're thinking ahead and preparing themselves, preparing you for what they want to talk about. Second is it shows that they have a really good self-motivation because they're not winging it, but they're preparing ahead of time. Okay.
Right.
And third is hopefully the topics and questions are really relevant, well thought through, and you can see that they're they're truly deeply thinking about their career and being successful.
Mhm.
That motivates me as a mentor to really want to spend time with that person. I want to mentor young people who are very motivated, right? I don't drive the young person. They drive me. The mentoring relationship should be driven by the young person. The mentor shouldn't be scheduling the sessions. The mentor shouldn't be suggesting what they talk about.
Mhm.
This needs to be driven by the mentee, totally. Okay.
Yep. So that all being said, first year or so out of college, there are a lot of crossroads, and a young engineer or a young employee has a lot of decisions to make, kind of right off the bat. And then after a while, you fall into a position where you're going to be there for a little while, or you're getting comfortable. So you want to keep the mentoring relationship alive, but it's a lot harder to come up with those questions because you don't necessarily have change thrust upon you quite as often. So do you have any tips for, coming up with those topics to talk to your mentor about, or anything that a mentee has brought to you that really you thought was insightful and a good question to ask, maybe, 3, 4, 5 years into the role?
Yeah, I mean, I have mentoring relationships now, Rebecca, that are 4 years, 5 years, with young people, and it just, we talk about not only maybe their studies at school, and then they graduate their full-time work, but maybe they have a new manager now and they don't get along with the new manager, or maybe they're working on a project that they really don't enjoy, or truthfully, their personal life, decisions they're making, and truthfully, whatever help they need, moving in, should they move? Should them and their boyfriend or girlfriend move in together? I mean, seriously, um, it. So I think a good mentoring relationship is one that there's a lot of trust on both sides, and what I find is no matter that in anybody's life, it's not steady state all the time.
Right.
There's always things happening. I have relationships with so many with the young people that when something comes up that they didn't expect, or something comes up that they feel confident about, but they want my advice, even though we may be scheduled to spend an hour every 2 weeks, let's say, or an hour every 3 weeks,
Mhm.
they may text me and say, John, can we talk today? And if they're in the middle of something, and this happens a lot, if they're in the middle of something they have to make a decision and they aren't quite sure, and all the input is changing constantly, I may spend 3 or 4 hours with one person over a 2-day span.
Mhm.
It may be morning, it may be afternoon, it may be evening, it may be all of those. So people, they know that whenever they need help, whenever they have a question, I'm available. After a meeting I have, or in the evening, after I take my dog for a walk and after dinner, you know, we'll always find the time. So I find the mentoring relationship, if it's truly brings value, and there's trust, it could never end. Seriously. Um, you know, I've been involved with two young women who have just gotten married, and I was participating in one wedding in Chicago through live streaming, and another wedding just last weekend in Beijing. through,
Wow.
she wanted me to do a video, congratulatory video that she showed at her wedding, me congratulating her and her husband in Beijing, you know? So so as life changes for the young people, what makes me feel good is they always want me to be a part of their life. And no matter whether it's whatever it is, personal relationship, work, school, whatever it is, they value my advice. So I just see it. If it ends, then it's up to them. They may feel, okay, I don't need the mentoring anymore, and that's fine, you know. But truthfully, almost all of them they just keep continuing, which is great.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I'm really glad you brought up the personal aspects of it as well, because I think there is possibly, especially in kind of engineering communities, a mental hurdle to get over where these people who maybe would have been your professor, would have been some sort of superior, you're building these personal relationships with. So there's the, career management aspect of it, but there's also the almost building a friendship, still respecting those who are the more senior engineers or staff, but you have more freedom in what that becomes in terms of a mentoring relationship.
Exactly. There's more with the trust you can confide.
Mhm.
You don't hold back. You can be very open and truly discuss what's important to you at whatever level you want to discuss it because you trust each other.
That's really great. So then I have a question for you. How does one sort of search out and find the right mentor for them? And I mean, obviously there's going to be, trial and error there, but do you have any tips for getting started in that process or how to, get in the right mental state to begin finding a mentor?
I think my philosophy, one of them is in life, the best things happen to you when you least expect it.
Mhm.
Okay. And there's also a saying we have: a watched pot never boils, right?
Yep.
If you put a pot on the stove and you keep watching it, because you want to have hot tea and you can't wait, see. So I think the best thing to do and I say this in the key insights to career management is don't be 100% internally focused. In other words, don't just do all your studies and that's it, or don't just do all of your full-time work and that's it. But get involved in outside activities like IEEE, like HKN, and other activities, and participate. Take leadership positions, expand your network. And what'll happen is, without thinking about it, you'll run into people. You'll run into people your age, but you'll also run into people, more experienced people, maybe in your local chapter or whatever. And I guarantee you'll run into somebody who you click with, kind of have chemistry with, somebody who has experience and knowledge in the areas you're interested in, and it'll just happen. And the best way to find a mentor is to have it happen naturally.
Mhm.
Now, I have a lot of mentees who watched all my postings on LinkedIn and all the talks I give and the courses I give. I just gave a half-hour talk for Northeastern University's energy conference today, just an hour ago, and they invited me through LinkedIn because they see all the things I do on LinkedIn, and I've been asked through LinkedIn messaging to mentor people, and some of the most, some of my longest mentoring relationships started through LinkedIn. so so it can be different ways. I think and how that starts is somebody hears a talk I give and they really like it. Maybe they asked me a question at the end of the talk and it was all virtual, and they say this is somebody who I think could help me, and then they reach out through LinkedIn. So I think it's a natural feeling as a young person that you have with a more experienced person when you hear what they have to say and their energy level and that type of thing. You just say that's the type of person that I would want to be my mentor.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that's, less pressure on the mentee as well to kind of, naturally find that. Though, as someone who is a young professional, there is also, as interns come in or as, new hires come in, they have buddies or they have mentors who are kind of paired up with them. So a question from the kind of young professional side of things, how do you be a good mentor or be a good buddy? What are some things that you've learned along the way that kind of help you build that relationship from the mentor side?
Yeah. Well, I think first is if you have a feeling that somebody could really help you and you feel chemistry and be a good mentor, never ever be afraid to ask them to be your mentor.
Mhm.
Many young people today tell me um, before they hear my talk on key insights to career management, they say, I was afraid to ask this person, thinking they'd be too busy, they'd say no. And I really emphasize in my webinar, don't be afraid to ask. And then they tell me afterwards, they got the courage to ask, and the other person surprised them and said, I'd be happy to mentor you. And they were so happy. But for months they were afraid to ask, so they didn't give it the opportunity. I think the most important thing as a good mentor, I've got all the experience and leadership positions and books and all that stuff, but I never, in a mentoring relationship, never ever talk about myself. Okay. And that's the worst thing a mentor could do, is be pounding their chest and talking about themselves. I'm always thinking of, I want to get to know the mentee, the young person, find out what's important to them, find out what challenges they have, what their goals are.
Mhm.
And so as a mentor, you want to be totally focused on the mentee. Okay. Totally focused.
That's really good advice. And kind of on that note, focusing on the mentee. So there's a word that popped up a few years ago for me where it was suggested that everyone go out and find or make sure that you have a champion. Definitely, from a women in engineering perspective, that was really a strong focus, though I think it could really benefit everyone. So a champion, as it was defined, was someone who's going to kind of go above and beyond to vouch for you and put you in positions that you know, may not have been able to find yourself. And they could say, there's this new opening. I know it's coming up. I think you'd be great for it, and kind of sell you to others as well. Is that something that a mentor would do? Or is that something where you really need a separate champion? Or could it go either way?
No, I would, your goal should be that those should be distinct from each other. And you would have many, many, many more champions, hopefully, and maybe one or maybe two strategic mentors. Okay. The mentor should be up above what the champion is helping you with. The mentor should be, overall career, possibly personal life, things like that. But the champion is more specific. The
Mhm.
champion could be a peer in your company, could be your manager in your company, could be more of a, you know, HR in your company, or there could be somebody in IEEE that's strategically involved in a committee
Mhm.
that wants you to join that committee, you know.
Mhm.
So that's really a more of a champion, and you want as many champions as you can. I mean,
Right.
that's you expand your network, uh, bring value to everybody in your network, right? And keep keep the relationships alive. And what happens is most of these people in your network are actually your champion,
Mhm.
because if you've brought value to them, they will always be thinking about how can they reciprocate, how can they bring value to you. Okay.
Right.
And that so you're going to build an army of champions. Okay. But mentoring is much more strategic. You don't want to mentoring is, if it's done right, it's extremely, extremely important. And you would never have a situation where you have 8 to 10 mentors. That's You would dilute the importance of it. You want multiple mentors is good because they can give you different perspectives, as long as they are different and can give you different perspectives. But I would, start with one mentor, and then see how naturally that goes. And if a possibility of a second one comes up that makes sense, possibly do that. But truthfully, the young people I mentor only have one mentor, and that's because they spend all their time with me. Whatever is coming up in their life,
Yep.
They have one person to go to, and then we spend as much time as they need to talk through it.
That's really good advice, and a really good point. So can you tell us a little bit about a mentoring relationship that you had as a mentee, where you had a really great mentor who helped you kind of either pave the right path for yourself or find something new? Just any mentoring relationship where you were the mentee that really meant something to you.
Yeah, there was one that just happened. I wish I knew why it happened. I still to this day have no idea. But I was a freshman at Purdue, first year at Purdue University in electrical engineering. But because I was in the honors program and it tested out of a lot, in my second semester, I was already taking double E classes as a sophomore. So I was ahead. And a professor there said, he was from Egypt. He said, Jean, I want you to come to my office. I want to meet with you. And my first year at Purdue, I didn't really know the professor. I was just starting to take the first double E course. So I went in this guy's office, and he looked at me, says, you're in the honors program. He said, I'm going to be your major professor. He's telling me this, not asking me. I'm going to be your major professor. You're going to specialize in power. Your whole curriculum is going to be in power, your emphasis. You're going to start graduate school in your third year. You're going to get an undergrad and master's degree in 5 years instead of 6, plus a full thesis. A good power engineer is electrical, mechanical, and nuclear. So you're going to take a fourth-year mechanical engineering course on power plants without the thermodynamic background that the MEs have. And you're going to take a couple nuclear reactor design graduate courses, so no nuclear, without any background in nuclear engineering. And now, no questions asked. So he literally, I don't know what he saw in me to invite this young freshman to his office, but my whole life, my whole thing was mapped out in that meeting, literally. And in 1968, he co-wrote the very first book in our industry on how to use a digital computer to model a power system. He was world renowned. I didn't know this. He wrote Computer Methods and Power System Analysis as Ahmed El-Abiyad with Glenn Stagg, published in 68, that revolutionized our industry. And this was in 1970. He took me under his wing. And my master's thesis then was the world's first three-phase unbalanced load flow, the first time we were able to model the power system on a full three-phase unbalanced basis. He was such a visionary, and I was so lucky. My whole life, the direction of my life changed with him and that meeting in his office as a first-year student. I'll never forget that. And I wish to this day, he's passed away, but I would love to ask him, what did you see in me? What was it that I did? You just took this first-year kid and invited him to your office,
Right. That definitely sounds like a very special and very unique relationship, in terms of kind of finding someone that early on spontaneously to kind of help you find your way through the industry and ultimately where you are today.
And then the next year, Rebecca, he said, you will join IEEE. You don't have a choice. He says, I'm active in IEEE, which he was, and he says, you're going to join IEEE. I was in 71, so this is my 50th year. And that same year, I was as a second year double E student, I was inducted into HKN that same year. So this is my 50th year in HKN also.
So definitely good advice. If you can join IEEE, join HKN. Will get you very far.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then on the flip side of that, have you had any mentees who have kind of broadened your horizons or who have kind of given you a new understanding of what mentorship is or could look like?
You know, absolutely. Um, because I don't have any structure, predefined structure with a mentoring relationship. I want each of the mentees to drive it,
Mhm.
whatever's important to them, and however I can help them. And I've had longer mentoring relationships with the same people that I didn't anticipate that. I thought mentoring might be, initially I thought it might be shorter term, but
Mhm.
it makes me feel so good that, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, with some cases, 7, 8 years later, that I'm still valued,
Mhm.
as this person has really advanced in their career to continue to want my help. But the thing that it's shown me is that there's no bounds. For me, there's no bounds to a mentoring relationship in terms of you should really let the mentee see whatever is important to them. Also, the other thing is there's no set structure with how often you meet.
Mhm.
I would say there's a minimum frequency. You want to meet at least every so and so. But as I said, I have, young people in peak periods of their life
Mhm.
where things are changing and important things are changing, important from their perspective, and they want help and they want it urgently.
Mhm.
And so like I said, I may be with the same person 8 or 9 different times over 3 or 4 days, um, and so whatever time it takes each time to guide them in
Yeah.
whatever they're doing. So again, that's what I've learned is there's no bounds, right?
Mhm.
I can help them with anything. The second thing is to be open with respect to frequency, how often, be accessible, because some of them are in India. I have some in, Bangladesh mentees, all over the world. So with time zone differences,
Right.
you know, um, I'm accessible anytime, morning, afternoon, evening, whenever they have something to talk about. So those are the two things I've learned in terms of no set structure time wise, and no real bounds on what we may talk about.
Yeah, and I think that really kind of drives home your point from before of, you don't have to rush and find a mentor. If a mentoring relationship is going to last, 7+ years, then if you take your time, connect with people and find the right mentor for you, you will more likely have one of those long-lasting, more meaningful relationships rather than just, a mentor to get you through the next 3 months.
In a sense, what you're saying, and I agree. If it's forced, it may be short term.
Mhm.
If it happens more naturally, there's a much better chance it'll be long term.
Yep.
Right.
So I think we're getting close to time here. So one more question for you. If there is a key message that you hope all of our listeners today take away from this conversation, or a few, what would you say, are the most important things about mentoring relationships that we should all kind of have in the back of our heads?
Well, sometimes people say to me, you know, why, especially students, you know, what would mentoring bring to me?
Mhm.
What value is it? And I said, well, maybe, if depending on how many internships you've had or co-op periods, I said, but what you learn at the university is very different than what you'll be doing when you start working full time.
Yep.
Okay? And think about it this way. What you learn at the university is the science of what we do. Anybody can learn that because it's books and professors, course material, that kind of thing. But that's not what has value in the real world. Okay? It's not the science that has value, but it's the art of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And the art of what we do, you can't read a book and you can't learn it in a week. Okay. That's how you apply the science in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes years of spending time with very experienced people, and you learn the application. You learn from their experience the art of what we do. And and what you want to do in your career as a young person is accelerate your understanding of the art, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you accelerate that? Mentoring is one of the best ways. Find the right experienced person and spend as much time with them as you can, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you will accelerate your understanding, your depth of knowledge. I talk about don't be a surface person and only stay on the surface and only learn a few things about something and then you move on to something else. You need to know the depth.
Yep.
The depth is what has value. Companies don't want surface people, they want depth people. Customers don't want to talk to surface people because they don't learn anything. So you won't be successful with your company's customers. How you learn the depth is involvement in IEEE and HKN, things like that, but also through a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So what I want to leave people with is to really be valuable in industry.
Mm-hmm.
You have to really know the art of what we do. And and obviously you want to accelerate that if you can. And the best way to do that basically is find the right mentor,
Mm-hmm.
spend as much time as you can. And if you talk to a lot of my mentees, they'll tell you they've learned so much about the real world, the application of what we do in the real world, and they've been more successful with their full-time work, with the things I've suggested, the guidance, the things I've helped them with, than they would have otherwise. So that's accelerated their understanding of the art. And the benefit of that is they advance more quickly in their company.
Yeah.
They're valued to a much greater extent than people their age, their peers,
Mm-hmm.
because of this mentoring help. Okay? So mentoring is key, and it can really help you with your career. Okay?
Thank you. That is very, very great, insightful advice. So everyone listening, go find a mentor. Well, don't go find a mentor. Be open to finding a mentor, and mentorship will, find you. Yeah,
Right.
so thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you to all of our listeners for joining this episode of HKN Career Conversations. Please remember to subscribe to this podcast, visit our YouTube channel, and find us at hkn.org. Also, please feel free to go and find some of John's other podcast publications. He has a lot of journal articles out there that are very, insightful, and I think all of you could get a lot out of. So in this series of podcasts, the Career Conversations, the Young Alumni Group of the HKN Honor Society bring together experts to have the career conversations about the challenges of being a professional today. This diverse group of hosts engage in a range of guests and experiences in search of valuable guidance. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thank you.